Welcome to CMA Connect, Canada's marketing podcast, with your host, CMA CEO, Alison Simpson.
So it's an absolute pleasure to welcome everyone in the room today, as well as the hundreds of Canadians that are joining us from across the country to this live version of CMA Connect. As we've heard throughout the morning, marketing isn't just changing, it is absolutely being redefined in real time. And it's so important to take time to reflect and digest and make sure that how we're pivoting makes sense. It's absolutely very much a period of test and learn as well. And the most recent panel did a phenomenal job of sharing how that's working for them as well. And both panels today have really given us a lot to reflect on. So building on that theme, I'm thrilled to be joined by Neil Patel, a New York Times best-selling author and also the founder of MP Digital. He's going to be joining me on stage momentarily, but while he's coming up, I will share a little bit about Neil. Neil's full-service digital marketing agency has helped industry giants like Microsoft and Google, just to name a couple, grow through revolutionary marketing strategies. He also has a marketing school podcast that attracts over 1 million listeners monthly. The United Nations recognized Neil as one of the top 100 entrepreneurs under the age of 35. Oh, and the Wall Street Journal cited him as a top influencer on the web. And just to round things out, he made Forbes' list of the top 10 marketers. You know what? I thought my career was going pretty well until I started to learn a little bit more about Neil. So Neil, I've had the pleasure of meeting and doing a CMA session with him last year, so it's great to welcome you back to Canada.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to jump right in. What are the biggest rules you've seen rewritten, and how are you going to score marketers on how we're adapting?
So when you're thinking about the rules of marketing, people just used to assume marketing was very black and white. I'm not talking about from the creative aspect, but in marketing in general, people are like, okay, you spend money on clicks and you get traffic to your website, you generate sales. You rank on Google, you get clicks, you generate sales. And one of the biggest rules that's been changed in marketing is platforms now are trying to optimize keeping people on their own platform, their own site, instead of sending people off to your website. Marketers believe that you would have to have people coming to your website to drive revenue and sales. You can now purchase on Instagram or TikTok without ever leaving that platform. A business generates revenue, and Instagram and TikTok still have the user. They sell them more products, more services. So I would say the biggest rule that I'm seeing being rewritten right now is the traditional form of marketing of sending them to a business to generate revenue is no longer the case. A business can make money on multiple platforms, and it's no longer about getting people over to your brand, your website. It's more so capturing their attention on whatever platform they are on, and then selling them right then and there on that platform natively.
And how are you rating marketers overall on our ability to adapt to that?
Marketers have been adapting really well. What we typically see is the marketers who work for SMBs tend to adapt first, and then the marketers who work at large corporations typically adapt second, because it just takes time and energy. And when you're a big corporation, that's publicly traded, that has a $100 billion market cap, it takes time to make adjustment versus when you're a 5-person startup.
Now, you also work with a lot of big tech organizations. So are they a bit more agile, or they're still suffering from the same?
They're still suffering from the same thing that all the other corporations are.
So Neil, as we look to the future, there are some experts out there that are starting to question, will brands continue to be relevant? So in your opinion, will brands still matter in an age of algorithms and hyper-personalization?
Brands, I think, matter more than ever before. Think of AI overviews. You do a search, you may get mentioned in AI overviews. You don't necessarily always get a click back to your website. You do a search on ChatGPT. You may see a brand or product or service recommended. You may end up purchasing later on. You may not purchase at all, but it's very rare that you're actually clicking over to the website. You see a reel on Instagram or video, whatever you want to end up calling it, short form. See a product or service mentioned. You don't go and buy right away in most cases. That brand recognition, though, is what eventually leads to a sale. In marketing, they call something the rule of 7, where there's this thing called the rule of 7. When someone sees or interacts with your brand 7 times, they're much more likely to engage, become a customer, evangelize. And we started looking at price points in both B2C and B2B. Of course, the cheaper the price point, the less interaction someone needed with the brand before they purchased. But when we looked at price points across the whole board for both B2B and B2C, the average number of interactions someone has with the brand when we did a study was around 11. So branding is more important than ever, because if you're not touching people multiple times and you're not staying top of mind, you're less likely to drive that sale when they're ready to make that decision.
Now, awareness and trust in a brand is obviously paramount.
Yes.
We heard the panel talk about the emotional part of a brand. There's always going to be product features and benefits, but as humans, we react emotionally. And we also heard a lot about authenticity. What else would you add to what makes a brand as important or even more important today?
So if you want your brand to be super important, I would say you got to figure out an angle. Trust, authenticity, these are all a lot of things that marketers talk about, and it's been there for a very long time. But what are you doing that's different? So I'll give you a great example of this, all right? I'm listening in, I'm from the States. I'm not familiar with as many Canadian brands as you guys may be. So one of the panelists before me was from Farm Girl. Never heard of it. I have kids. Don't give them cereal in the morning. Why? It's terrible for you in most cases, all right? The advantage you guys have here in Canada is you guys typically have cleaner ingredients. Our box of Fruit Loops is much worse, at least from what we see on Instagram Reels when they compare, versus what the Canadian version of Fruit Loops is, all right? So when I saw Farm Girl, the first thing I did, even if there's a tariff for me, I try to purchase it on Amazon. I think it was like $20-something USD per package. I added 3 to a cart, and then I'm like, wait, I'm here for extra few hours. Can I just go to the grocery store and just pick some up? Because my suitcase is half empty. I'm literally here for a day, right? I should just go to the grocery store and just see if I can shove a ton in. I don't know what's going to happen at the customs, but I'm global entry, so hopefully I don't get any beef. But that was a unique angle. Solving a problem that people have. When I grew up, I ate cereal, and my parents didn't know any better. Immigrants from India, they look at it as anything's great. We're not living on the street, give your kid whatever's on sale, affordable, cut coupons, etc. At this point in time, we're much more educated as parents than I would say that the previous generations were. And it has nothing to do with intellect. I think a lot of it has to do with the data and the social platforms pushing out so much information that we're able to consume it and learn more. But going back to it, that brand stood out to me. She's booming, great growth. I'm happy for her. But as a consumer, her success of her generating tons of revenue and growing fast isn't why I would buy the product. I'm buying the product, either it's going to be Amazon or in-store if I can find it, but I'm buying the product for one simple reason: a unique value proposition solving a very important problem. Parent, busy in the morning, don't want to give them crap food, don't want to spend tons of money on Uber Eats to get restaurant quality food in there. I tend to do the morning shift, terrible cook, healthy cereal, why not, right? But in the US, I don't think there is a skip, right? Or I would do skip, whatever it may end up being, right? I feel your guys' pain, by the way, without getting into it. But that is why I was willing to purchase that brand. And to me, that is something unique, okay? And when you see something unique like that, people end up latching on and they see fast growth. I don't know her revenue numbers, but I bet you they're in the 8 figures. Sounds like a new business, but if I had to place a bet, I would bet you they're in 8 figures. Why did they scale so fast? That brand did something unique and new that people have never experienced before. Now, there may have been another competitor who did exactly what she did a year or two earlier, but if it doesn't get out there, no one talks about it, then to most people, it doesn't exist.
So Jennifer, you have at least one sale from your appearance this morning. I suspect you have a lot more in the audience too.
Well, minimum of 3, because I added 3 different flavors to my cart.
So it wouldn't be Marketing Week if we didn't talk about AI with at least one question.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's transforming marketing. How do you see it impacting marketing? And probably more importantly, what are the skills you think we as marketers need to build moving forward?
So I was here last year and AI was a center. And people were discussing AI and how it's going to crush everything. It's going to turn everything, upside down on the pyramid. And the way organizations do business is going to be drastically different. All right. So we've seen a lot of data. I've always been on a different side of AI than what I think a lot of marketers and businesses believe. Keep in mind, though, a lot of this is not my opinion. I talk to people who are actually coding these products, and I speak with the people from these platforms. Like, no joke, whether it's in their offices or dinners. Like, I know some of the top guys at, these corporations that are worth a crap load of money. And although their goal is to make AI as seamless as possible and help you in every aspect, there's a few big problems that most marketers aren't taking into consideration. The first problem is the way AI works is it takes all the data inputs and it creates outputs based on what you ask, but it learns from all the inputs. The problem, with AI is those inputs aren't all accurate. And there's not an easy way to solve this. It's like do a Google search. Have you ever noticed that when you do a Google search, some of the information you read is just off? Raise your hand. Okay, almost everyone in here is raising your hand. You don't think Google hasn't tried to solve this? They've been trying to solve this for ages. Like when I say ages, almost since when they started. It's hard. Oh, what are you going to base it on? Backlinks? Well, a lot of people link to inaccurate information. Comments? A lot of people comment on something because, whether you want to talk about health or politics or religion, there's people on both sides, so it creates polarizing views, right? A great example of this is the vaccines. When the vaccines first came about, when COVID, people in different parts of the world were getting shunned if they did not take the vaccine. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not here to get political. But if I fast forward to today, and I'm not going to have you guys raise your hands, because again, not trying to get political, I bet almost everyone in this room does not get booster shots. I don't even need you to raise your hand. I can see the data in the earnings calls, right? These companies are publicly traded. It's just the reality. But when it first came out, most people had a different tune about vaccines. And it doesn't mean that the government is right or wrong or pharmaceutical is right or wrong. But what I'm getting at is the information online and what people were posting was very polarizing, or people had different views. So when AI pulls in that, how do they know what is right or wrong? It makes things really complex. So today, when you ask AI to help you with something, you need humans in the loop to review. When you have AI help you with a marketing campaign and come up with a strategy, and everyone starts doing that, how is it really going to be differentiated? The creativity that people have is what makes marketing truly unique and amazing. But here's the thing, AI in marketing is here to stay. It is going to make the whole industry move faster, move much more efficient, and what you'll see is people will get things done much faster and waste a lot less money. But even then, you're going to still have humans in the loop. It's just AI is going to replace a lot of the D and C players. I eventually believe it'll start replacing B players as well. We're quite a ways from that. When you want to look at how much AI has advanced in the past year, I understand that you can see like, oh, wow, look at this video that it created. Look at this action figure it turned me into. But look at it from a usability perspective, from your work that you're performing on a daily basis. You want it to have it create content for you. Has it really drastically improved the quality of that content over the last 6 months? Not as much compared to when it first came out in the first year. There was so much more progress that we would see in the quality of improvements. But it's taking longer for you to see leaps and bounds and improvements for things like content quality. And the reason being is every % improvement is a lot more work than at its earlier stages. Again, it is here to stay. It is going to replace a lot of the bottom feeders or the people who aren't that great at their job. And it's going to make the people who are really good at their job more valuable. They're going to get paid more. And you got to figure out how you can continue to learn and adapt to try to stay in that top percentile in whatever industry you're at.
So clearly everyone that's tuned in today, if they're not already an A player, wants to be an A player, want a long-term career in marketing. So what skills do we need to be adapting or growing in order to make sure that we're here in the long term?
The first thing is learn how to use all the AI tools. When I say learn how to use them, I'm not talking about just putting in a prompt into ChatGPT. Think about the KPIs your department, you, or the business has to hit. What are things that you can do to help AI get you there faster, more efficiently? And figure out ways to use the tools to show positive traction. Not, hey, look, I used ChatGPT and I did all this cool stuff for the last 30 days. Oh, great. And they're like, yeah, they fast forward 6 months. Look at all this crazy stuff I did in the last 6 months. What were the results in traffic? Brand recognition, revenue, leads. They're like, it saved me a lot of time. What'd you do with the extra time? I did more of that stuff, but it didn't produce results. If it doesn't produce results, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And I'm not saying AI can't produce results. It's that most marketers are using it for stuff that is a waste of time. And you need to start focusing on how can you use these tools to not only help you do your job better, but show better results. And a lot of that's going to come from experimentation. The second thing is continually go to events and learn. You never will know everything, and that's okay. I've been in this space for more than 20 years, 24 years now. It's changed drastically. And some people ask me when I'm at some of these events, sometimes I talk to these college kids, and they're like, why'd you waste 15, 20 minutes talking to a college kid? Are they going to become a customer? I'm like, no. They're like, so why? Do they know more about marketing than you? I'm like, well, it depends. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, they grew up using these platforms. I didn't. They see some of these trends and patterns before I do. What can I learn from them that I don't understand? And that's what you have to do when you go to these events, is network with everyone, because you don't know who you're going to learn from. And never judge someone by their job title or the size of the company they work at or their net worth or the way they dress. You literally can learn from anyone. And when you do that, you'll become a much better person. The third thing, thank you. The third thing is continually read every single day, but limit it. If you want to read for leisure, by all means, read as much as you want. But what I see people doing in marketing is continually reading articles and blogs and books, and they may read for 4 or 5 hours a day, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to try to read for 30 minutes or an hour, and then go and implement what I learned. So you read all these cool things that are happening with AI or marketing or branding, or you even listen on a panel or a podcast, but very few people take that knowledge and do anything with it. Try to experiment. You're probably not going to be able to do it daily, but try to implement one thing that you've learned from a podcast or a book or blog or article at least once a week, and you'll start slowly growing your skill set as a marketer, and you'll start seeing better results. And if I had to give you one last bonus tip, when it comes to becoming better as an individual, don't just look at things as KPIs. Don't just look at it, here's the year, I got to hit this goal. I want you to also start looking from a different lens, and that lens is, what are all the problems that are holding us back from growing or hitting our numbers? Now break it down to, what are bite-sized things that can be fixed within a week? And start just tackling them one by one. People really do miss most their goals and objectives within an organization. And the reason being is they shoot for, hey, I got to do this in a year, and they don't know how to get there. But if you start looking at things as problems and you start fixing them one by one, you fast forward 3 months, 6 months, you're like, whoa, we've made a lot of progress, and we're seeing it in our numbers because you're just tackling a lot of the issues you have as an organization. And when you tackle them, you usually see growth.
So remarkably great advice. I love the learn by doing. I love sort of chunking it out, and those like small steps lead to, with the benefit of time, huge outcomes. I also love you can learn from anyone. So in any, beyond networking and events, in any organization you're part of, if you have the opportunity to speak to students or anyone at any level in an organization, the amount of incredible insight and ideas that come out and that you can benefit from at any level in the organization is incredibly powerful. And then your first piece of advice resonates the most with me. Anyone that wants to be future-proofing your career in marketing, if you are doing work that is driving a business forward, that is growing the business and delivering results, there is no better way to future-proof yourself. And as a profession, all of us need to be much more accountable and embracing of the commercial value that we're driving, and really do a good job of advocating for the critical role that marketing plays in building brands and building businesses today. So Neil, outstanding advice on all 4 counts.
Yeah, thank you. And one last thing, when it comes to AI, the amount of businesses we interact with across the world that still haven't moved to the cloud is ridiculously high. The reason I say that is AI is definitely here. The cloud has been here for a long time, and we all know it's here to stay. Businesses don't adapt as fast as most people think. This is why startups can overtake trillion-dollar companies. Is because large organizations inherently move slow. Politics, bureaucracy, a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, right?
So decentralized technologies are reshaping how consumers are interacting with brands. How, in your opinion, will this shift the influence of loyalty programs, but also engagement strategies?
Yeah, so let's first go with loyalty programs, right? I think there's actually going to be a huge shift to loyalty programs over time, which leads to the second part in how is this decentralization going to relate to companies just abroad? If you look at the pattern right now, people use multiple social platforms. I won't have people raise their hand, because I bet if I ask you how many social platforms you use, most of you guys are going to raise your hand for 1. Actually, all of you will, or almost all. Most of you are going to raise your hands for 2. Most of your hands will raise your hands for 3 a month. But the moment I ask you if you use 4 social media platforms a month, very few of you are going to raise your hands. 5 is going to really drop. But the average person logs in and uses 6.6 social platforms a month, according to Sprout Social. 6.6. And the same thing is happening with search. People are starting to use Google, ChatGPT. They're starting to use Perplexity, and the list goes on and on. The same goes with tools, and a lot of the tech out there, people are using multiple platforms. And what you're going to end up seeing is technology is everywhere, and the way regulation ends up working is these companies are more likely to get split apart at this point than to continually be able to buy up their competitors. And it's not a US thing, it's not a Canada thing, it's a global thing. If the US approves an acquisition, then Europe may not. The perfect example of this is there's Pinterest and Snap. They don't make anywhere near the amount of money that Facebook makes. Their stocks are struggling. Don't you think in an ideal world, Google would just buy X, Pinterest, Snap, and all these platforms because they have the biggest ad ecosystem? They can just drive tons of advertisers and ads on their platform and just juice the revenue without doing much work? This is not a hypothetical. This is actually, if they bought it, you would see the revenue just skyrocket. And what I'm getting at is they can't, because governments globally will not allow them to. You have to get a lot to approve to do one of these acquisitions. So what you're going to start seeing is technology continue to be fragmented. People will use it for what it is. People started skirting around the law. A great example of this is, did you know that Amazon and Google and Facebook have not bought in that many AI companies? right? I get they're buying some companies here or there, but do you know what they did? Hey, you should open source your technology and we'll take a lot of your employees and pay you a license deal to use that technology. This was their way of getting around monopolistic issues or laws, or the government's not wanting them to buy up competitors and then be the only player in town. And what you'll end up seeing is technology will be out there for multiple platforms. And these platforms, the biggest trend that you're going to see is you'll have to not only learn to use technology for wherever it is, and all the data won't be stored in one place because of rules and regulation, but these platforms will try to keep you on there for everything, including things like loyalty programs. The all-in-one apps that you see in Asia, you bet you're going to start seeing more of them here in Canada. Wouldn't it just be easier, just like you can purchase a product now on Instagram, that when you're in Starbucks, you use it through your Instagram app and you get hooked up? It's easier to do that than it is to download a Starbucks app, right? And that's what you're going to end up seeing. And then the data is going to be per platform, and you're going to have no choice but to use each platform for what it is, and data and analytics will be more important than ever.
So marketers, especially in a soft economy, especially when there's uncertainty, there's a lot of pressure for short-term results, and short-term results are really important. But short-term results only last when you're also doing long-term brand building. So how can marketers balance the two?
Yeah, you don't have a choice. Ideally, you need to think long-term with your marketing, but people need short-term results, especially when the economy is bad. So I like using the 80-20 rule. 20% of your efforts should be focused on short-term things that have a positive ROI. 80% should be long-term. But just because they're long-term doesn't mean you shouldn't see results within 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. It should get progressively better over time. It may not be in full effect until a year or two, but it doesn't mean that you can't see some results within 3 months. When you're thinking long-term and like, oh, cool, we're going to do this, we won't see any results until year 4, you're probably doing something wrong with your long-term approach.
With the rise of user-generated content and influence marketing, how can brands maintain narrative control while still embracing these channels?
You cannot maintain narrative control. That is a false sense of reality. I can go buy Farm Girl cereal. Between all my social platforms, I have millions of followers. And hypothetically, if I had a terrible experience, I bet you I'm going to have a delightful experience. This is just a hypothetical. I could say, look how bad the cereal is, and allergic reaction and all this kind of stuff. But I looked at the ingredients. I was literally zooming in on my phone on Amazon, really clean ingredients. And that's when I added it to the cart, right? I literally swiped and zoomed in. And then on the flip side, I can say, look at this, I've had an amazing experience. Look at my kids, it's not getting them addicted to, 50 grams of sugar per serving or something crazy like that because it's healthy, it's well balanced, yada, yada, yada. You guys get the point. And I haven't looked at the ingredients, but I'm assuming it is more, or I haven't analyzed the ingredients fully, but I'm assuming it's much more well balanced than, let's say, a general cereal that you pick up off the grocery aisle. But I can say something good or I can say something bad. She can't control that. She can try to combat that, but you can't control the narrative. You can respond to the narrative. You can try to create your own narrative, but you will not be able to ever control the narrative ever again. And that's the reality. Doesn't matter what country that you're targeting or focusing, you cannot control the narrative anymore. That's how social media works. All you can do is respond and do your best. And this is when I tell people, when you have some people saying bad things or negative things, try to respond and don't be combative unless they're really off, but try to do it in a polite way and show them what they can do to improve. If they did something wrong and they use a product or service in the wrong way, or if they didn't, say thank you for the feedback. I'm really sorry you're disappointed. If there's anything we can do to make it right, please let us know. And we're going to take this feedback and work on improving our product and service, and this is how. But just being transparent and honest and just being public about it, a lot of times it does a lot of good.
So building on that, it goes back to the importance of brand building and having brand advocates, because even more powerful than the brand apologizing is when your community steps up and apologizes or helps combat the negative as well. So it just speaks to performance marketing and brand building. It shouldn't be one or the other. It absolutely needs to be both.
Yes, but your community is more likely to respond and defend you if they understand that as an organization that you guys are willing to listen. If you don't listen, then you're going to be screwed. That's reality. Someone's going to go to the competition. There was a panelist earlier who was talking about mortgages and how they adapted based on people wanting, low, better rates, refinancing. I don't know the full backstory, but they figured out a partnership with another company based on what I heard, and they figured out a solution for their customers. That's an example of listening. People just want to know that you listen. If you listen, it's okay if you make mistakes. Everyone does. But if you listen and you're willing to adapt, admit when you're wrong, and showcase how you're going to improve, you'll get the community to rally behind you. If you don't, and you're just going to be arrogant and be like, no, you're wrong, I'm smarter than you, then why would anyone care?
So, Neil, as immersive digital experiences evolve, how should brands prepare to build and sustain their identity in virtual spaces?
Yeah, so virtual spaces are going to be very similar to what you see right now on the web. It's all digital. You have a website. You have brand guidelines. Imagine a virtual mall and someone wearing augmented reality glasses like Oculus or Apple Vision Pro, I think it's called, right? Vision Pro? I used to have one of those. It caused me a massive headache. But cool technology. I'm just waiting for the glasses format. I'm like, dude, I thought I was going to travel with it. The carrying case is literally a backpack. And I'm like, I can't fit a backpack within my backpack. How am I going to even fit my laptop at this point, right? But just like you have brand guidelines for the web, your social media, your website, you will have the same for things like virtual reality and virtual spaces. There's not much of a difference. Even when corporations integrate their brand within games, which we're starting to see more and more, and that's starting to become more normal, what happens? Brands not only make money from this, right? A game may get paid for a brand integrating within their their characters or uniforms or whatever it may be, but they have brand guidelines, just like you see with the offline world. And we're seeing companies now being like, oh, let's mix Oreos in with protein powder and be like Oreo protein powder. All right, you're using Oreo's name. There's definitely brand guidelines that you're going to have to follow from Oreo when you integrate their product in. If you don't believe me, once you sign the deal with them, you'll see that they'll force you to use certain types of colors, logos, etc. their way for integration. And you're going to see this whether it's virtual, digital, right? Virtual is another version of digital, or in the traditional sense.
So our event this morning is called Exclusively for the Brave. So in today's climate and looking ahead, what do you believe is the bravest move a marketer can make and why?
The bravest move that I've seen marketers do is figure out how to crush their existing model and transform into a new model. You look at Shopify, Canadian company, one of the best products out there in the e-commerce realm, period, right? You can look at their earnings as proof. They built an email product. They want in marketing, as a business, they want everyone to use their own systems. What do they eventually end up doing? Partnering with Klaviyo, taking a big cut, crushing what they actually wanted because they did what they felt was better for the user or the future based on what they saw for adoption. Most people aren't willing to do that. The CEO of that company, I think, is exceptionally brilliant. I'm not talking about just from an intellect standpoint, definitely is smart, but I'm talking about he's willing to do stuff that most companies would not be willing to do when he knows it's the right fit for the long run. Think about doing that for everything. We have marketing tools like Ubersuggest and Answer the Public. We were burning $300,000-$400,000 a month on these tools at the very beginning and releasing them for free. And they still are for free. There are paid versions, but most of it's free, 80+% of it. And people are like, you're crazy. And I'm like, this is actually cheaper than spending money on paid ads. And I'm like, it will be. But at the beginning, it was costing me $300,000-400,000 a month, and I was barely getting any leads from it, and I was just eating a ton of money. Now, when I do the back end math, it would be something like $6 million a month worth of ad spend to generate similar results. Doing what's unconventional that people haven't tried before, taking those risks, is really how you be brave. And I've been to Canada many times. People tell me Canadians are conservative. People tell me Canadians can't take risks. I call bull. They're smart people. You guys can do anything you guys put your minds to. You guys have built some amazing corporations throughout history. And not just that, people all over the world are using Canada products. Believe in yourselves. You can do anything you put your mind to. You don't have to take the traditional route. I know the Shopify CEO posted about how many people work in government jobs here in Canada and was showcasing the stats over time. And this is where a lot of people said conservative, and he was talking about, need to bring more entrepreneurship, need to take more risk in Canada. And you guys are, and you guys can. And if you look at the last 3, 4, 5 months, the people in Canada have really come together, and they're making changes, not just in, the way they spend money and shop, but also in what they're doing as businesses. Look at the Farm Girl founder. Worked at, I think, Accenture, she said, Bell, and I forgot the other company.
Rogers, I think.
Rogers. Look at that. 20-something years. She's 29, just remember. 25 years working in the corporate world. And then she went on and created her own business. Good for her. You guys can do the unconventional stuff. And here's the kicker. Because of AI and technology, you can do it much easier and with a lot less risk than before. But just believe in yourselves. There's so much amazing talent. We're a global company with people in 28 countries, I think. Some of our best talent is here in Canada. We run our creative globally out of Canada. Has nothing to do with currency exchange. People talk about Canada as currency exchange. I don't look at it that way. You want to know why we run our creative here from Canada? Because we have some of the best creative talent we've ever found here in Canada. Seriously, you guys have amazing talent here. Don't count yourselves out.
You're doing it because you're very smart. That's why you're doing it. So
we just did it because, seriously, when we looked for the talent, we looked globally, it was amazing talent here. Ronnie, one of our managing directors in Canada, one of our best global leaders, right? He's from the side that speaks French, though.
So, Neil, you clearly have a very enviable career, and I know everyone that's tuned in today and is with us in person would benefit from learning about from your journey. So what's one piece of advice that you would leave our listeners with who want to follow in your success in your entrepreneurial career path?
The biggest thing that I've learned, and it was from my mom, if you don't try, you'll never receive. And when I say don't try, people are like, oh, just take a shot. I'm talking about trying crazy stuff, all right? So my mom immigrated from India. English was her second language. Back then when she went to school, English was not the first language. So when my mom came to the States as a teacher, she didn't have a teaching degree that was valid in the States, so she had to go to nighttime college. We couldn't afford, we lived in low-income housing. We could not afford for daycare. And my dad had to work as well because you got to put food on the table. And no joke, my mom pushed a stroller to school, a few miles a day each way, there and back, and said, I'll teach for free if you keep my kids here while I teach to build up the hours so I can get my credits and then get my certification. She did that for 6 months, no pay. All right? Then one day when she started her own school, she did one of the craziest things ever, and she's like, this will work. And I'm like, what is it, Mom? She's like, I'm going to go to all my competitors' schools and tell them, hey, the state only allows you, or the government only allows you to have so many kids based on the teacher ratio and class ratio. So you're full. Here's flyers. I want you to give them to every single parent that comes in here or asking to put their kid into school. when you don't have a spot. And she went around to like 60 plus schools. Most of them just threw her flyers in the trash thinking she's crazy. A few of them sent her students. All of a sudden, she went from making zero to over $100,000 a year, which is a lot of money, because she gave flyers to all her competitors and asked them to promote her school because they were full. She didn't give them a commission, no affiliate deal, no money exchange. She just asked. And it worked. That was just crazy stuff that she would try. And she always taught me, if you don't ask, you'll never get. And I remember one day my dad took me to Nordstrom's because someone gave him a gift card. He would never naturally shop there. It's expensive department store. Someone gave him a gift card. He's like, this blue shirt is the same as this white shirt, same brand, but the white one is 50% off and the blue one is not. I want the blue one, but please give it to me at 50% off. And the lady's like, I can't do that. It's not on sale. She's like, why not? You're discounting the other one. I want to speak to someone else. They actually gave him 50% off. And then he used his gift card. But what my parents taught me is if you never ask, you'll never receive. And they asked for the craziest stuff. And someone being in the corporate world, if you even work in the corporate world or you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. You can ask and you'll be shocked on what you can receive. There was a guy named Rich Barton. I don't know if you've ever heard his story. He created a company called Expedia. You guys familiar with Expedia? Did you know he went to Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and said, I want to create this company called Expedia. Give me $100 million. I think it was like $100 million that he wanted. You know what they did? They did not give him $100 million. Like, but you can use a Microsoft name in our cloud and we'll spin up a separate company. We'll raise it from other people and we'll hook you up as well with equity and ownership. That is how he became rich. He convinced his boss, technically he asked his boss for a large sum of money, or his boss's boss, and they said no, but they liked the idea enough where they spun up a new company, took money from other people, and that's how Expedia was born. The moral of the story is most people would not ask their boss for $100 million. 20-ish plus years ago when he did that, $100 million was way more back then. Companies never raised that kind of money. In other words, if you don't ask, you'll never receive. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or you work for a corporation. If you have something that you truly believe in, fight for it, back up your data points with data, and other people agreeing with you or signing off or backing you up, and see how far you can go. And remember, when you get a no doesn't mean no, it just means not right now. So readjust your pitch and come back and be like, yeah, I know you said no, but I'm adjusting it. And no just means not right now. And eventually, people love that persistence. You may wear them down and get that yes.
Neil, thank you so much for a really great conversation, for a really great morning. It was a wonderful way to kick off CMA Marketing Week. Also want to say a huge thank you to everyone that's joined us in person and virtually across the country. Looking forward to seeing you at a lot of our events this week. We've got a great training session that's free for members this afternoon, and we've got a whole array of other in-person events, socials, professional development opportunities, and lots of ways for us to come together as a community. But Neil, a huge thank you to you and for NP Digital for kicking off our CMA Marketing Week and for a really great podcast conversation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to visit thecma.ca and sign up for your free My CMA account. It's a great way to stay connected and benefit from the latest marketing thought leadership, news, and industry trends.